I'm going to try to make an object for Sansar in 3D code and see how easy can I make it to be. I'm using a start file which I'll be providing in the description of the video. It contains this what I call ground tile. It will be 2 meters on the side if you were to upload it to Sansar in the OBJ format, not in the FBX, because that's a different scale. Anyway, that's just a reference that helps me visually. I'm not working on this ground, I'm working on a different layer that will contain my sculpt, and today I'm going to just doodle something that doesn't really look like anything, but that will serve our purpose. I don't know, like some crazy modern art sculpture that you found and not willing to get rid of, maybe. Anyway, I'm making a clone of my ground, because if you look, it's not even what I created, so I want this wonderful sculpture to stand on the ground in Sansar, so I made it flat underneath. So now I'm going to look at the wireframe, and I see that there are many tiny triangles, and he says down here that there are 48,000 of them. So I mean, if you were making something really relevant, you could maybe use 48,000 triangles in Sansar, but not for this thing. So you need to make it into something usable. So I think maybe 6,000 triangles could be allocated to this. It's got quite a few bands here and there, and it's all round, so you can't go really below that, I think. So anyway, I'm going to use something called Otopo, which is going to create the mesh for me, because I want this to be easy, right? So I'm leaving everything by default. I had entered 3000 polygons beforehand, and that's corresponds to 3000 quads, which in turn translate to 6,000 triangles. So now the computer is working, and it's taking a bit of time, and you just have to wait to see the result, and if it doesn't work you just start over, but it should work. So here we have our mesh for Sansar. It's now 6,400 triangles. We could further optimize it by collapsing some edges where they are not needed, but not today. Anyway, see that the shape of the green mesh, which will be what will be uploading to Sansar, is more or less conforming to the shape that I sculpted underneath. I just have to check if there are some holes in it or anything. This here is not pretty, but well, I leave it like that. It doesn't really matter for a test. could just change it a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so then what I would normally do would be to mark seams by hand to make the UV map, so that you see on the right here on the screen, you see that it makes a blob, and it's supposed in fact to unwrap the whole mesh onto this square, and like this it counts until you mark enough seams to create islands that will fill the square. Anyway, I'm not going to do this by hand because I want to make this easy. So I'm going to go here and use automap. This is not at all what I would have done by hand, but I think it will work more or less. In some places, like here, maybe when we look at it in Sansar, we will see a spike. It will not be pretty in some places because of the ways the seams, the green lines, that's what are called the seams. Like this area, from some angles it will show, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So now we have our mesh. It has a UV, and I'm going to bake from my sculpt. So it's going to take the colors where it's metal, where it's not shiny, where it's got a little bit more detail. It's going to take all that into account and bake it to my new mesh. I have to choose a texture size. I don't want to go too high because then again it's just a doodle that doesn't really matter. I want to triangulate it because Sansar will triangulate it anyway, whether I do this or not. So I want to do it myself so that I can see the result beforehand inside 3D Code, and not let Sansar do it and just not knowing what will happen, because for the moment it's just all quads, but when it gets turned to triangles, some funny things might happen depending on the way you triangulate. I mean, you could have a line here or a line here, and it will change quite a bit of things. Anyway, I'm just baking now. Well, the computer is. So the work is done. Now I hide my original sculpt. It's not needed anymore. I go to the paint room here, and this is the result. This is what we're going to see in Sansar. I see some error here. I made a mistake and some area didn't get baked. I think. Yeah, that was the ugly part of the mesh. Oh well, let's leave it like that. All I need now is a collision mesh. So I go back to the retopo room. I get rid of our mesh. and I will create a new simpler one. This doesn't need to be perfect. You won't see it. It's just what you're going to bump into. So I check again if it's whole. It's all one piece. So I'm going to export this and call it collision. And go back to the paint room and export this, and I need a diffuse that's a PNG and which has the color of the mesh. I need metal, roughness, and a normal map, and I'll call this doodle, and I export it. Now I'm going to open Sansar. So I select my mesh, I select my collision. I don't want to standardize the material settings. I need to tell Sansar where the textures are. I'm all good, and I import. It's going to take a while because Sansar is converting the textures, and then it's going to be uploading. Okay, so it shouldn't take much longer. Now we have our object here. And you see that it looks just like in 3D code, with all the metal bits and the rusty parts. And I think it worked quite well. So the scale is, like I said, it was good. The size it was for visiting human size, but I'm just making it bigger to have a closer look. Well, anyway, I think this works fine. Let's look at the physics shape, the collision shape. So you see that's what I did, the second mesh I built. You can see it here. So there you go. If you want to give it a try, you need 3D code, you need a Wacom tablet for the pressure, and I was navigating with the 3D mouse, which makes it easier to turn around and go into little corners and all. Anyway, that's it.